was also shame. Shame. Because when you don't have money, you don't have papers, and you don't have French, a social circle, you really are isolated. It was intense for years, which is why in the book we'll talk about that first decade. I call it my decade of survival. But it was critical to building the foundation for what will come in the next decade that I refer to as a decade of thriving. But it was a life-defining moment, and I've had other ones, being made redundant, the global financial crisis, becoming qualified as a chartered accountant. As soon as I qualified, I got sacked. That was a point of no return event. In 2009, before I met Mary, I'd been reading, we were on this personal development drive, which really gelled really well with my immigrant thinking. I wanted to see progress. So because we'd started that journey, I'd become introduced to the concept of financial independence. And for me, it was a very liberating idea in that I thought, wow, so that means if we really manage our money well, we became a really good steward of our finances, many years down the line, we could actually live how we want. We could actually have many options financially. So when I then met Mary and we met learning property investing, the reason we were there learning property investing was because it's part of a strategy for approaching financial independence.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Against All Odds. My name is Daniel Coker, your accidental podcaster, and our guest this week, I can't believe it. I've got to pinch myself. I really have got to pinch myself. But our guest this week in the studio is Mr. Ken Okoroafor.
Yes.
And he's going to explain the meaning of his name in a second. But Ken is someone I've recently become acquainted with. Him and his wife, Mary. They have a fantastic story. He's the co-founder and the CEO of Humble Penny.
Yep.
They don't really need much of an introduction because I'm sure you've seen them on YouTube. They've got a massive YouTube channel, and they've helped tens of thousands of people through their academy and several hundreds of thousands of people across the world, just by telling and sharing their story. So Ken, welcome to the Against All Odds podcast.
Thank you, man. Listen, that was a really kind introduction. That was a proper big up. No,
I'll set you up.
I'm really honored. Thank you.
Right, let's just get straight into it. So the name Okoroafor.
Yes.
Tell us what that means.
So Okoroafor means it's actually two words coming. It's a compound word actually. So Okoro means a young man in the Igbo land, Igbo language in Nigeria.
Oh, that explains why you look so young.
I haven't got too much stress in my life, so that kind of helps. So Okoro means a young man, and Afo is a market day. So back in the day, they used to have 4 market days. Yeah, so first, second, third, and fourth, and Afo is the 3rd market day. Yeah, so Okoroafor means a young man who trades on the 3rd market day of the week. Yeah, so that's where the name came from.
Okay.
So,
It's quite interesting because since starting this podcast, quite a number of people that I've interviewed, I'll probably say maybe 85 to 90% of my guests in this podcast have been of Nigerian descent.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have asked the question a few times as to what is it about Nigerians that makes them so bold and so daring, to do things that others would find unimaginable. I've had many answers. One of them being that Nigerians seem to not have the concept of limitation. It's like, why not?
Yes.
Why not? Plus you're an Igbo, which is even worse.
That's even better. Yeah.
I want to ask a big favor. Your subscription means a lot to us because the bigger this platform gets, the bigger the guests get. So do me a favor, please click on the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. Now let's get back to this episode.
There's a saying, Nigeria they carry last.
Okay.
It means basically we don't come last.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're very like go-getting, and in Nigeria you don't have a safety net. You might have in the UK and other parts of the world. So that safety net, because that safety net's not there, you're typically eating what you kill. It's very
you've got to survive.
Exactly, you've got to make it. And it's not just survival, you've got to thrive. It's a difference, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just, I just want to get by. No, it's more than that. I want to make a huge impact. I want to live well.
Yeah.
There's more.
Anyway.
That's a Niger
attitude. I like it. I'm finding that I'm becoming more and more Niger by association.
Funny. People think I'm Ghanaian.
Really?
Oh my God. I've had a whole debate. Even on LinkedIn, people are like, Ken, you're Ghanaian. I'm like, no, I'm actually Nigerian. No, but you don't seem Nigerian. People said to me, you don't seem like a typical Nigerian. You seem Ghanaian.
Yeah.
I've had people who are so short, they're writing me emails, they're greeting me in Ghanaian language.
Really?
Oh, loads of times. Loads.
Maybe it's a disposition. I mean, you're a bit calm. You have a calm disposition.
Maybe that's what it is.
Because the typical Nigerian tends to be a bit more sort of out there.
Do you know, it's interesting you say that, because I'm married to Mary, and we've been married now coming on 13 years. And Mary's of the Yoruba tribe. I'm of the Igbo tribe. And the Yoruba are more, the personality is more, in Nigeria we say gra. Okay. It's more like, in your face kind of thing. Okay. Whereas the Igbo is slightly different, a bit more subdued in a way, right? But we still have our confidence. We're still, forward-looking. Yeah. But it's a different. It's a different thing.
It's a different vibe.
Yeah, it's a different vibe.
Okay. Yeah. Right, Ken. A lot has been put out there. I mean, I forgot to mention as well that you and Mary have co-authored a book.
Yes.
Financial Joy.
Yes.
Amazing.
A Sunday Times bestseller, actually.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Sunday Times bestseller. I've got a copy. I've got a Kindle edition.
Thank you for buying one.
Fantastic. Such a well-written book. And we're going to go into it in some detail. But before we do that, basically Ken has an unusual story. He came to the UK as an immigrant at the age of 14. With his family. They hustled, and he went from an £80 a week cash cleaning job, to being financially independent before the age of 40.
Yes.
Okay, now I'm not talking about financial independence on paper and all the stories, all the yada yada. This is like somebody who's really managed to find a path to achieving that freedom. And as he just said a few minutes ago, he doesn't have much stress in his life. I can see it on his face. Ken, give us a very brief background for the benefit of our viewers. I mean, all of it, the detail is in the introduction of the book about his story and Mary's story. But if you can just give our viewers a snippet, just to give a bit of context.
Yeah. Thank you for that introduction as well. So, look, I moved to the UK in 1998. I was 14 when I moved here. And when we moved here, my dad had come a few years before to scope out the land and try to find the spot. My mum and my brother and my younger sisters, we then moved here with my mum on the same day in the summer in 1998. And it was tough, I'll tell you right now, because we moved here we didn't have money basically. You had enough to buy your ticket and what have you and move here. But then the difficulty started when our visa ran out. We became
after 6 months.
Yeah, after 6 months. We became technically known as, and I didn't know any of it, this, but I'd learned this afterwards.
Overstayers.
Yeah. And this is a big problem because in the pecking order of the people that make decisions about residency, you're not very important basically. They're trying to get you out of the country. So we would spend years fighting court battles, going to various courts to basically fight off deportation from the country.
And the funny thing is your dad has a British passport?
Yes. And this is a challenge because they don't look at it that way. As far as they're concerned, we were being looked at as individuals. So when I moved to the UK, I moved here on my mother's passport. Because below the age of 16, you can be on a parent's passport. I don't know if they still do that, but in Nigeria, you could back then. And so it then took, trying to find my own identity was a struggle. I had no paper to my own name. Like everything was on my mum's thing. I had to gradually start to build my own identity. And with that came trying to also find our way when it came to money. Not having money is such a painful thing. You know, my parents would work, my mum, my dad would work 3 jobs easily. You know, these are people who had proper qualifications in Nigeria. My mom has a master's degree, my dad trained as a vet. But those things became not useful here in the UK. They tell you need to upscale and try and match up with the UK. So anyway, things were very difficult. And not only that, the culture, people, I was being bullied at school. Came in at year 11, the worst time to move to. The worst time to come into school and like, yeah, you're trying to form friendships. People are like, nah, bro. And it wasn't cool to be Nigerian in the late 90s. Yeah. It was not cool. There was no Afrobeats, no Burna Boy, that existed. So it was hard, you know, and there was also shame. Shame. Because when you don't have money, you don't have papers, and you don't have French, you know, a social circle, you really are isolated in many ways. You know, because you can't just buy whatever you want, you can't live however you want. Things, you know, it was intense. Just put it that way. Not just intense for a short period, it was intense for years. Which is why in the book we'll talk about that first decade. I call it my decade of survival. But it was critical to building the foundation for what will come in the next decade that I refer to as a decade of thriving. Because I felt like I had to go through the fire almost. And education was a big part of the picture. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But effectively, my journey has been a journey of discovering how this country works, trying to understand how I'm able to navigate it, taking risks and not just relying on schooling and education, but looking at other ways that I could one day create a different life. And then at some point in that journey, meeting Mary and becoming united and coming together as a couple and having a 10-year vision for our lives. And that will play a critical role in the journey. So I hope that's a short enough kind of like intro, because I know we're going to be unpacking a lot of things.
But you missed a few critical bits, which are, okay. So he's also a chartered accountant.
Yeah, oh, sorry, yeah.
Chartered accountant. He had a first class degree.
Yes.
He has an executive MBA from the University of Cambridge, which he got 8 years ago.
Yes.
And then obviously he's an author as well. And he's done some pretty amazing things, okay. So I just thought I'd chip that in.
Oh, thank you. I actually forgot.
That's important. How convenient. I did say short, but I think this is a bit too short.
Okay.
Anyway, so in the book as well, you talk about the fact that something you mentioned about the book is point of no return. Okay, yes. And I found it quite interesting because, in other words, it's like change-defining moments.
Yes.
It's like moments of transformation.
Total.
Yeah. You know, and those moments are like they come in an instant.
Yes.
And they last for a period of time.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to endure. You've got to figure things out.
Exactly.
Tell us a bit about that.
So, a point of no return in the book. As you said, is a point of change where something significant happened. So, for example, moving to the UK for me was a point of no return event. Although I didn't think of it that way at that age, I would come to realize that later on because it was a point where I'd left behind all my friendships. Because remember, back then there's no internet, there's nothing like that. So all those people I knew from my secondary school in Nigeria, I just forgot about them. because there was no WhatsApp groups or anything to keep in touch with people. But it was a life-defining moment, and I've had other ones, being made redundant, the global financial crisis, becoming qualified as a chartered accountant. As soon as I qualified, I got sacked. That was a point of no return event. I'd spent 3 years becoming a chartered accountant, first time passes, I did everything I needed to do, but the global financial crisis happened. Other points of no return events are having children. Big deal. Big deal. Nothing prepares you. Or getting married for me, you know, because when people ask you, what's it like being married? And a single person's asking that question, it's how to explain to them. Because when you're married, particularly as a person of faith, you know, it's no longer just about me anymore. You know, two become one. I have to look at this thing very differently now. And it's not just about what I want as my ambitions, but what we want as a unit. And that changes the perception on how I see our current lives and how we see the future. The pandemic was a point of no return event. For some people, it's divorce, you know, or it's a health scare. You went to do a checkup and they suddenly found something. And at that moment, your life cannot be the same anymore. You may have to change your lifestyle. You may need to reduce your hours at work. You may need to start to accelerate your retirement plans or whatever. So the reason I highlighted that, Mary and I highlighted that, is because for a lot of people, life happens. A lot of people just coast through life. And I have a strong belief that point of no return events are there almost like a slap in the face event to almost shock you to a point where you pause for a moment and think, what do I do next in my life? What are my core priorities? What, have I just been coasting through this life and just doing life like everybody else? Or do I now need a complete reset to think about my life from a different perspective? So yeah, that's what that means. Yeah.
Another thing that I've kind of figured out is that you and Mary seem to be very aligned. Okay, and personally, I think that is extremely helpful. I'll let you talk about it because for you to even come up with a 10-year plan, okay, and the book is broken down into 10 weeks. 10 weeks, yes. Of practical things that you can do to get a better grip of your finances and all that. Your alignment with Mary, seems to have, number one, I think they are aligned from a temperament perspective.
Yeah.
Yes, we are. And then also from a financial perspective, I could also sense that alignment because in the book you talk about the fact that when you started working, you had your first paycheck, you went and bought a Mercedes, you had a Rolex and all that, but then you had your bank balance was non-existent. And then you did mention there was one low point, I think when your sister or somebody came, your younger sister or something, she gave you some money. And yet it was like you were driving a nice car, you had a Rolex.
And I'm the older sibling.
How embarrassing that was. Anyway, Mary on the other hand seems to have learned, in the book she talks about the fact that she observed a lifestyle from her parents. I've never met Mary and I'd love to meet her one day. But one thing that I seem to feel coming through the book and seeing her on various, podcasts and various things like that, is that she seems to be a very stable person, very grounded person, very frugal. She kind of watches her pennies.
Yes, she does.
Which is probably why humble penny, and I was humble penny. But the two of you being aligned have managed to become financially independent before the age of 40.
At the age of 34, yes, that's when
that is pretty. Tell us a bit about that alignment.
Okay. So my beautiful wife Mary, been happily married for 13 years this August. To understand what you just described, I need to go back to how we met.
Sure.
I think that's important, very important. So in October 2009, I was reading one of those free London papers. There's an ad in the paper to kind of learn about property investing. So I went along to this event. Mary was not meant to come to the event. Her brother was meant to come with his wife. But his wife was not feeling very well. So he took his younger sister along to the event. At this event, there were about at least 200 people, massive room. I look back and, I don't know how to describe it. I literally knew when I saw Mary that this person would become my future wife. It's a weird, I don't know how to describe it. I was at the front of the room. I left the room. It was a weekend thing, Friday, Saturday, Sunday event, 3 days. Went to the back where she was with her brother. And we got to do activities together, tasks. We got paired. And I still have a photo, I'll show it to you later. There's a photo I have of this day where Mary and I were asked to do a task. There's a wall called a commitment wall. And on the wall, we had to write down what our commitments were. As remember, we're strangers, but we're doing a task on the wall. What our commitments were for the next few years. And we're writing this down. And when the event finished, we were like, I actually bought her lunch. I bought her a prep.
So you've been investing for a long time.
Exactly. And the prep went down well. She was so happy that this guy, this is like when I met my wife, she's honestly absolutely beautiful and graceful. And she received my prep really well. She's really happy. We got chatting. Her brother didn't find it to be like, who's this guy talking to? He was okay with it. Okay. So we exchanged numbers and became just friends. And let's start talking and become friends. But the reason I mention that is, you see, we met in an interesting environment where we met to learn something where we had common interest in. I mention this because a lot of single people are trying to meet future partners, and they're like, where should I meet my partner? So it was actually an interesting space. And then what then happened after we met and started dating was, and I proposed to Mary. I said to God, I prayed about this. I said, if Mary and I carry on getting to know each other 1 year, literally from today's date, 1 year, and everything goes well, I'll buy a ring and propose. That's exactly what I did. 1 year later, we were engaged and we went on our first holiday together to prepare for our wedding. And it was at that holiday in Zanzibar, in Tanzania, we put together some of our savings, booked a ticket, a bit of a transit flight to get it a bit more cheaply. That we sat down at the beach, because at that holiday, there was no internet. There's no you couldn't watch, there's no TV. In Tanzania, it's all huts and stuff. We're sitting at the beach, we're like, let's just talk about our wedding and plan. And we're like, we're gonna be married, let's talk about the future. This is where that 10-year plan came from. And I found that Mary and I had a lot in common. Mary's born in London, in Hackney, lived there for 27 years, immigrant parents who moved to the UK in the 70s. Money was a very challenging thing as well. So we had a lot of commonalities in terms of we really wanted to break out of that cycle of not having very much and do better than our parents. So that's where that journey of decided, in addition, I should mention, we did marriage prep classes. And the marriage prep classes helped us a lot because it helped us to really solidify what we want from a marriage. It wasn't just, a flashy wedding that would be nice for people to look at. It was what do we want? What does love look like for us? What about children? What about in-laws? What about money? What's our current relationship with money? How much debt do we have? All those things meant that we started off on a very solid foundation. But to us, we saw God as the absolute foundation of that unity. So when you put all these elements together, we began very, very strong. We've carried on very strong, seeing everything as two have become one, and not pulling in different directions like we saw our parents do. One person was doing that, another person is doing that, and they didn't really know what they were doing as parents. But we wanted to almost look at things from a different perspective, and that's how Mary and I began this journey.
Right. Yeah, it's quite interesting. You talk about a very siloed approach that is very much at play in many people's homes, between couples and partners, where there's very little unity and of purpose and direction. But you said that you took a decision to do things differently.
Yes.
You know. So at what stage did you then decide that one of the milestones of this 10-year plan was to be financially independent?
Good question. Yeah. So in 2009, if I met Mary, I'd been reading, we were on this personal development drive. I was, and so was she. I wouldn't know this until I met her. I've been reading lots of books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and all these various books.
Millionaire Next Door.
Yeah, and I was reading a lot of American blogs because I kind of figured out that the culture in the UK was a bit more, how should I put it, not very risk loving. Basically, people were not very kind of like punching above their weights. But when I read American blogs and I followed people in the US and stuff, I just thought they had a very interesting outlook on life, which really gelled really well with my immigrant thinking. I wanted to see progress. So because we'd started that journey, I'd become introduced to the concept of financial independence, or wanted to become financially free. I'd become used to the idea. And for me, it was a very liberating idea in that I thought, wow, so that means if we really managed our money well, we became a really good steward of our finances, many years down the line, we could actually live how we want. We could actually have many options financially. So when I then met Mary and we met learning property investing, the reason we were there learning property investing was because it's part of a strategy for approaching financial independence. One of many, including stock market investing, starting a business, and many other things. So I was already grounded in that idea. But imagine how incredible it was to then meet somebody else who I was very attracted to, who also had similar outlooks, but who also wanted to become financially independent.
Okay.
It was perfect.
Win-win.
It was just like, wow. Yeah. I didn't even have to convince her. She already wants it. This is her vision for her life as well. So when we came together, it became unified. So we did our 10-year plan. Part of it was we wanted to buy and own our own home, and we wanted to become mortgage-free sooner. But beyond that, we wanted to become investors, business owners. We wanted to really do life very differently to our parents. I didn't want to work till I was 67, and still pay, struggling to pay my bills and stuff like that. I wanted the optionality to really feel that I was being daring, doing what I felt God was leading me to do in different ways. Taking what we refer to in the book as faith walks and really using my abilities and skills I'm acquiring in different ways, whether it's to earn an income or have impact in different ways. But we wouldn't know how that would play out. We only had almost a high level picture of we want to become financially independent, we want to be completely mortgage free, we want to start a family. I'll give you an example. Mary and I bought a house, bought a 4-bed house. We hadn't even had any children. This is it. We're like, this is a faith walk. We're like, God will bless us. We'll have children, and we had a recent special moment where our son just got into his preferred grammar school, secondary school, and it felt like a full circle because we began that journey in an area where we wanted them to get into a particular secondary school and that sort of thing. Again, this was tied to that 10-year vision. Joshua is 11 now, so this is that 10-year vision has played out way beyond our imaginations. But it all began with that one afternoon in Tanzania.
Yeah. Wow, that's a truly seminal moment in your journey. One thing as well that you talk about in the book, or a strategy that I know that you use to accelerate your journey to becoming mortgage free, was actually to make accelerated payments.
Yes.
And it's something that I personally use as well. It was actually quite interesting. So I bought this property. I won't say the value of the property. But I bought the property for quite a bit of money. Had a mortgage on it. Then it was a 2-year fixed rate mortgage. So I went in to see my bankers who I got the mortgage from to get a new deal.
Sure.
And the mortgage lady I met said to me, I shouldn't really be telling you this.
Oh, okay.
Okay, black lady, So I shouldn't really be telling you this, but because I've been trying to make overpayments and all that. She said, look, what you need to do is the same mortgage, reduce the term.
Yes.
Okay, because if it's a 25-year mortgage, they calculate the profits over over 25 years, and most of your monthly payments go towards repaying the interest rather than the principal.
Yes.
So for the same amount that I was paying, she just restructured the mortgage, and it went down from 23 years to 13 years.
Yeah.
The same amount. I was paying the same amount.
That's so interesting.
Same amount. So she saved me 10 years of mortgage payments.
That's wow. Okay.
And I didn't pay a penny more. She just went in, she said, no, let's review the term, that's the rate, da 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 da.
Wow.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? I've been paying 10 years. Can you imagine? Just think about that. That's like
I know.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about, maybe let's go straight into it, because I'm quite conscious of the fact that there's so much that you have. There's so much.
I'm loving this comment. There's so much to talk about.
There's just so much to talk about that we could easily get carried away. But okay. So in the book, you talk about key principles of financial joy.
Yes.
And one thing as well that I really like about what you're doing is that you exude a certain happiness around you, and it's something you talk about in the book, that you went for a couples thing, and then the person running the program came about and said, you guys feel different, there's an energy around you and all that. So your type of financial freedom is one that comes with joy and happiness.
Yes.
And it's actually a fulfillment of scripture, which is that when God blesses you, there's no sorrow. The blessing of God, does not come with sorrow. But yours is just happiness, joy, and all that. And in the book you talk about certain key principles. The first principle is that you need to have 3 seeds of mindset, skill set, and tool set.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that.
Okay, so firstly, financial joy is bringing 2 worlds together that normally you don't see together. So usually what people do is they focus on the financial element. They're trying to become financially free, and that's good, but they do it at the cost of the joy. The joy is about if financial is about our wealth, the joy is about the well-being. It's about fun, it's about purpose, it's about all those other softer elements that people usually just brush away. Yeah. So the book is quite daring in that it's saying, how do you unify these 2 worlds together practically, such that it becomes a lifestyle actually. So you're not pursuing money at all costs, but you're considering your values. You're thinking about so many things and prioritizing them in a practical way day to day. Now, coming back to that first principle in the book, of which we share quite a number, Mary and I've seen that a key part of what's helped us on this journey is prioritizing our skill set, our mindset, and our tool set. What do I mean by that? The mindset most people can relate to, and I want to touch on that briefly actually about mindset, is there's a big difference between having a scarcity mindset and an abundance-led mindset. The scarcity mindset basically effectively says, look, you and I, we're getting to know each other, but then all of a sudden, if I suddenly say to you, oh, I've had a promotion at work, you suddenly start to feel, oh, but what about me? And it eats away. That's a scarcity-driven mindset. It's that thinking that there's only one pie or one pizza in the world, and if you take one, or if a viewer watching takes one piece of that pizza, then there's only little left for me. So that means that we're almost backstabbing each other because we're trying to fight over very limited resources. When in actual fact, think about it, there's never been more money available in the world today than ever before. So it's about thinking from an abundance perspective that more can be created, more can be accessible to more people. And so that's where mindset comes into the picture, because that mindset dictates how your relationship with money evolves. If you have a scarcity mindset, you'd be very afraid to invest your money. If you have £1,000 in your bank, you want to see it. You log in, you're like, I can see my... you're like, I can see my 1,000. I feel like exactly, right? So you never want to invest that money because you're like, oh, I don't know, I don't know what might happen, That's a very scarcity-driven mindset. Whereas an abundance mindset thinks from a different perspective. You think that money flows through you. It doesn't just come into you and stay there. It flows through because you have that God-given ability to be a steward of money. You tell money where to go. Go there and derive this return. Go there and help this community. Go there and do this and help me to run this business. Yeah. It's a different mindset.
That's mindset. It's creating a stream.
Yes.
Different streams of it.
It flows. So and the second, and this is why money is a currency. The word currency, it flows. The second piece of talk about mindset is then skill set. There's a very direct positive correlation between the type of skills you have and the degree to which you're able to earn. So if you don't have certain skills, particularly as the world is changing, technology is changing, so many things that are changing, one might feel like they're being left behind in a way. So we have to always want to skill up and improve ourselves. Like for example, at one point in my career, I felt like my career was a bit stale. I was just like flat. I went to do an exec MBA, I did my chartered accountancy stuff, and I've been learning so much outside of formal education by doing stuff, trying things out, experimenting with my own money, starting businesses, stuff like that. That's where skill set comes in, because that then leads to better outcomes, provided your lifestyle is not creeping up as well. Because if your income's going up and your lifestyle is fairly flat, then you create a bigger buffer that can then work for you and do so much more. Now, tool set is one that people don't talk about. So tool set is about what set of tools can I use to achieve my goals a lot better, a lot quicker. I give an example. A book like this, that's a 10-week plan, is a tool set. Because it's come from people who've actually done what somebody might want to do. So you're like, wow, this is part of my tool set for creating wealth or building what I want to do. Getting a mentor or a coach is a tool set. Faith is a tool set. Because you're not like, you're not just waiting for everything to line up before you take a step. You're waiting for the light to shine on the floor for you to see a spotlight before you're like, oh, that floor looks really safe. I can step in it now. So faith is a tool set. So when you then look at this journey of wanting to create a particular life, in our personal assessment, it's then those three things. They're like three seeds that need to come together. If you only have mindset without skill set, not very much happens. You need to take certain actions, you need to make certain things happen. But you need practicalities. You need tool sets. Could be a budget, could be a forecasting plan, it could be a cash flow plan, it could be, those all form a part of your tool set for success.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. When I did listen to you speak on another platform, and I just shook my head and said, this guy knows his stuff. Because you were saying some pretty amazing stuff, and I'll change my podcast simply because of what I heard you say.
Whoa!
I've completely changed the podcast.
Really?
Because of what I heard you say. I'm not going to tell the viewers what I heard.
Tell me after.
Okay, another thing that you talk about is that, becoming wealthy and happy are not mutually exclusive. I think you've touched on that. So let's move on, because one is getting through here. It's quite a few points. Okay, principle 3, start where you are and turn your life around.
Wow.
Tell us about that one.
So
that is
this
so
one,
powerful.
Honestly, this one I really love, because I feel like I've seen the examples with my parents. I use them as an example, and I use me as an example. So my mum and dad moved to the UK in their 40s. And oftentimes a lot of people feel like it's too late for that. They're like, oh man, like the boat has sailed. It's too late for me now. I can't do anything. When in actual fact, there's so much that's possible if you, first of all, take stock of where you are and realize that the only possible outcome is to begin from where you are and take that next step forward towards a particular destination, a direction. So where we are right now is very important. It's a big part of self-awareness, actually, is acknowledging where you are. Like, where am I right now? What's the state of my life at the moment? Where am I financially? What habits are letting me down at the moment? What habits and behaviors are letting me down at the moment? Where do I feel I could improve in terms of my development? What do the people around me look like in terms of the people I hang around with? Could I be in different spaces that might lead to other outcomes? But the key is to realize that where you are is actually a good place. And this actually speaks to gratitude as well. Because a lot of people, might feel like I'm at a place where things aren't really going that well for me. But if you really take stock of where you are, there's so many incredible things that you have going on that other people wish they had in their lives. It might not be that you're at a good place financially, but you might have other things going on for you. So it's very important to appreciate where we're at and see your place where you're at as a place of advantage. And in actual fact, it could be your worst case scenario, such that you're able to take certain steps forward to make more happen, basically.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Like, I started this podcast with nothing but an iPhone. That was all I had. Didn't have anything fancy, just an iPhone, an idea, and faith. And I stepped out. And the rest is history.
It's the same with a humble penny. 2 hours a day. That was all I had. I was working my day job.
Wow.
When we started Humble Penny, the theory Mary and I had was, we're going to use 2 hours a day to change the world. That's it. Because it compounds. You put 2 hours a day in, 2 hours a day, you keep putting it in consistently. I kept writing those blog posts, putting them out Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. I was writing stuff. Before we even started making YouTube videos and all these various things, we started with very little. We had small seed. I put about £300 into getting somebody in the US, a lady in Florida, to create our website, our first version of our website at humblepenny.com. She designed it, and I was writing the blog posts. And Mary was learning how to design things. Again, unity there. Whilst I was writing, she designed all the graphics online, and we'll pair them together and then publish the articles. We started with literally what we had. I didn't want to make excuses and say, oh, I'm a busy CFO, I've got 2 children, I've got this, I've got that. Everybody's busy, But everybody has the same amount of time. But it's about how do you avoid distractions? We're also distracted. How do you avoid distractions and carve out a part of what you have and then use that resourcefully to make things happen?
Yeah, you did say that you did part of your 10-year plan was like you're going to do things different. And that's quite clear. Okay. Another principle that you talk about is that your money story is emotional and complex, and that's okay. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, interesting about money, what we think about money is that a lot of us don't think about that complexity part comes from our relationship with money. So, how did we grow up? Where did we meet money? Where did you and money meet? Where was your first meeting? Where did it happen? And as you were growing up, how did your parents think about money? There are different phrases. There's rice at home. Money doesn't grow on trees. Just say, Daddy, can we have McDonald's? No, there's rice at home. That's it.
It reminds me of the story of a couple who went out for a meal, and then they got to the front of the restaurant, and they looked at the menu, and they looked at the cost. Let's go. Right?
So a lot of those things form our relationship with money. In fact, your relationship with money is tied to the grandparents' generation. Because think about it, the way you view money and look at money in your upbringing is tied to how your parents did it, which is tied to how their parents did it. If you want to really understand the root of your relationship with money, you need to look at the grandparents' generation. Speak to your parents and go, if your grandparents are not around anymore, how did grandparents see money? How has it influenced you? For this book, I had to interview our parents. But to sit down with both mom and dad and interview them, understand how they saw money growing up and how it's influenced us. That then feeds into the emotions when we think about money, because it's a lot of the emotions we have around money leads to people almost self-sabotaging, leads to people thinking from a scarcity perspective, leads to people making certain decisions that mean that their relationship with money is actually unhealthy. But the point I'm making there is that backdrop is okay. It's okay to know that there's a lot that's happened for you to kind of get to where you are. It doesn't mean that you can't change it. So you can change your relationship with money, and it's okay that it's complex, but it leads to another principle in the book, which is that where you want to get to in your life is actually a design problem, and design problems can be solved. You know, it's a bit like this property we're in. This is a design problem.
Yeah.
Like someone had to. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The same thing applies to our finances, starting a business. All of them are design problems.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. You know, it's quite interesting. I was talking to someone last week, a young lady, and she was saying to me that she's been saving up a bit of money and all that, and she just kind of felt like treating herself. So she had gone to a Mercedes dealership and had chosen out a Mercedes with her dad. You know, but just about to sign the finance, and just didn't feel. I said to her, "Goodness, that was the best thing to walk away." I said to her, "The moment you drive that car to the showroom, the value's gone down
Straight away.
You know, you're far better off putting whatever money you've saved into an asset, and then the asset then pays.
Does the work.
Pays for whatever you have to do." I don't know the last time I drove a car that I paid for. You know, I have assets that pay for these things. Everything I do, there's something that pays.
Something's paying for it.
Something's paying.
And that's the mindset. That's the because even with our journey, even though we focus, and everyone's journey will be different, and that's very important to acknowledge. Even though we focus on paying off our mortgage, we've got other investments. Like people always think that, oh, this is the only thing we.
I wish they knew.
No, you got that very wrong.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because before we came on camera, we had a conversation, and the kind of things that you're involved with are far beyond just paying off the mortgage.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Exactly. You know, we'll go into that. Okay. Another thing you talk about is that financial literacy is not enough. Because some people, I mean, I tell you what, Rich Dad Poor Dad, many people have read the book.
Yes.
Okay, but guess what? They haven't done anything yet.
Yes.
They go for these courses, they go for all these things.
So true.
They don't do anything with it.
Yeah. It's the same as I always say to people, like, look, hands up if you know that smoking is bad for you. Everyone knows that, right? Or hands up if you know that accumulating expensive credit card debt is bad for you. Everyone knows that, everyone knows. But it doesn't mean that people don't get into credit card debt, or that they don't smoke to the point where they might have, you know, bad health problems, or it's actually behavior led. It's a lot of money. It's actually emotions, habits, behaviors. It's how do you encourage the right money habits such that you actually see changes happening. So on one hand, you might have somebody here who, on this section here, is maybe living paycheck to paycheck. There's certain habits and behaviors that, even though they might be earning a good income, have led to that outcome economically. Whereas on this end, they might want to get to this point where, do you know what? I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. I've got investments, I've got good savings, I've got a good buffer, I've got, you know, I'm doing well. The gap between these two is a behavior gap. And that gap needs to be closed by certain changes being made to one's behavior. But it begins with self-awareness. It begins with conversations. People speak, if people are in a couple relationship, chatting to each other, trying to figure out what on earth's going on, and you know, having a vision for what they want to achieve and that sort of thing. You will never close that behavior gap completely to a point where there's zero. However, when you combine your learning, the knowledge aspects with this realization that actually, I need certain habits. I'll give you an example. A lot of people wake up and their account's falling into overdraft because something's left the bank, like a direct debit, or something's left that didn't expect to happen maybe. One good habit to have is to stack a new habit you have on an existing habit. Imagine like one habit you have is every morning you wake up, you sit in your kitchen, have breakfast. You could stack the habit of checking your online banking statement on your phone whilst you're having breakfast. So an existing habit is helping to create a new habit that will help to close that behavior gap, such that when you check your online banking, you're like, oh my God, I need to sort this thing out so that I don't incur overdraft fees that could then lead to compounding the problems that one might have financially. So a lot of behavior related things comes back to intentionality. So what are my existing habits? How could I start to introduce some new habits that could over time stick because I'm pairing them with certain habits that exist already?
Yeah, it's quite interesting about habits, because there's a couple who came to you once for a loan, and this couple between them were earning close to £400,000 a year. Okay.
Wow.
I mean, and I couldn't understand
£400,000.
£400,000. Okay, and I couldn't figure out why.
That's astonishing.
Yeah, but then I visited them in their where they lived. I saw where they lived. I saw their lifestyle. Then I understood where the money goes. Yeah, I understood, because there was more lifestyle. Well, the lifestyle had increased to beyond the money.
Yes.
You know, whereas they could have just tweaked things. I mean, if they changed their habits a little bit, you know, they probably would not have needed, you know, that bridge.
And this is common in our communities. I want to put this out there. We see this a lot. I'm sure it exists in other communities, but in our black communities, it's actually very common. I remember coaching a couple once who they make 10 grand net income per month. A couple. A lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
However, they're struggling to save £1 grand a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Real struggle. Like, not even a joke. Like, we don't know where the money goes each month, because it goes into, you know, basically keeping up. You know, expensive schools, expensive. you know, like all
just put it out there.
Yeah. Like
I could feel you just trying to hold.
Yeah. I don't want to make anyone feel too trigger anybody, but this is the reality. Is if you look at them, the usual suspects are: I've borrowed a lot, I've bought too much house for my money, so I'm paying back a lot. I've subscribed, and all my children are privately educated, but I'm really struggling to pay it. I'm also like wanting to live my life like everybody else and keep up and do all the things that everybody's doing, and that's taking all my money. And at the same time, I'm not really keeping track of what's going on. So at the end of every month, I feel like I'm living paycheck to paycheck, right? When you tally all these things up, you know, you can kind of see what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Another thing that you talk about is that growing your income starts by breaking the employee mindset. And I know that you're big on side hustles, because even Humble Penny started as a side hustle. Amongst many other side hustles that you've done, property, investing, other things that you've done on the side. So just tell our viewers a little bit about that. So
the employee mindset is not saying you shouldn't be an employee. You can be an employee but not have an employee mindset. So the employee mindset basically means, an example of that is, you're waiting each month for your paycheck to come on the 28th of the month. You're literally, your life is, I got paid today, I'll wait till next month on the same time. You're waiting for this repeated. And then, I sometimes question things like, it's like, whose idea was it that people should be paid once a month on a specific date each month? Whose idea was that? Like, whose concept was that? Why not get paid weekly or daily or like a month from different sources? So that's an employee way of thinking, which is the 30th, and then you pin your entire life and all the expenses around that one event, which means if you don't have that job, there's a problem, because that income doesn't come in. You'll rely on the salary. The employee mindset is also where one is waiting for someone to tell them what to do. You go to a job, you're someone who is well skilled, but you're always waiting for someone to say, here's your tasks, here's the projects we need to work on. It's not very enterprising. It's not very kind of like solutions driven or problem solving focused, where you're like, wow, I've spotted a problem. How could I solve this problem? How could I create value and stuff like that? So what I'm saying is somebody could be in a job and love their job, but not have the employee mindset. They could be in there as an entrepreneur at work, looking for new business, negotiating a deal where if I bring in new business, I get 10% or 15% commission. That's you now switching on a different part of the brain, and you're being more enterprising.
Yeah, actually, my second guest on this podcast, a guy called Ken Okoroafor. He used to be the CEO of Morgan Stanley. He's just moving across to run Fannie Mae, which is America's biggest company.
Wow.
Ghanaian guy.
I'd love to meet him.
Pretty amazing guy. And one thing Peter said when I interviewed him was that even though he was actually a track and field athlete for Britain.
Really?
Yeah. And he went did IT and he realized that look, the IT money, he couldn't survive with it. I mean, he couldn't live well with it. So he made some quick moves, moved to investment banking, and he's done extremely well for himself, extremely well for himself. But one thing Peter does is that even though he's got about 25,000 people who are reporting to indirectly in his group.
Yeah.
Right, at Morgan Stanley. I don't know how many. Fannie Mae is America's biggest company.
Huge.
So that's going to be even bigger. But one thing he said, which I found very profound, was that he always thinks about how can I add value to this organization. So even if it's not directly related to the area that he's running, he sees an opportunity where he can make Morgan Stanley money. Yeah. He goes and says, look guys, there's this deal coming up. I think we can make money here.
Yeah.
And he pitches it to them so the organization values it. Within the corporate world that he's operating, and he's at the top level. He's like a businessman within an employee setting.
That is perfection. I've seen people. I used to work. One of my jobs previously, I used to work as a head of finance for a prime brokerage company. And I remember as part of my role, I had to pay sales commissions to a lot of sales guys. And some of the guys in there would make the sort of basic income that people wish they, was like a desirable basic income, like quite a lot of money as a basic. But they made most of their money from negotiating commission deals, from finding new business. And I thought that was perfect. They literally carved out almost like a business within a business for themselves. And that took a different mindset. Not everyone can think like that. It's one thing that I wish was taught more at schools, or even better, shown more at homes. Because if parents learn those sort of skills, they will teach their children. And if they live that way, this is one thing I'm trying to do, Mary and I trying to do with our children, is help them at the age of 9, age of 11, to become enterprising. Our children are trying different things out, trying to solve problems, looking for ways to create value, looking for ways to negotiate with us as parents. And I like that because it's
a soft skill.
Yeah.
Which are critical. I saw something you posted on LinkedIn the other day about your son pitching to you a new business that he was trying to go into, and that was just fantastic. Okay. Right, the last question, the last principle we're going to do, because I know we're kind of pushed for time. I did tell you that. We're going to struggle.
I know, there's so much to cover in a short period of time.
And we can't do justice to this, if we're going to be picking from here and here. This is why I said that. Let me just focus on the principles, because it won't work otherwise. And guys, I think you should just go out there and get the book, because I'm totally blown away about it. I've got it on my iPad here. So you talk about the principle that financial joy is for everyone and available to you now.
Okay, let me tell you why we went for that, and why it's a very important message. So there's this, again, it's a mindset thing. So a lot of people often feel like where they're at the moment is not good enough. So I'm here, and I'm looking at everybody else doing very interesting things, and I don't feel fulfilled until I feel like I've gotten to financial freedom, or I earn until I get to X number of properties, or I get to X number of millions in my stock portfolio, right? When in actual fact, if you think about it, if you actually pause for a moment and just think, wait a second, there's something wrong with that way of thinking. Because if you think about it right now, forgetting anybody else for a moment, and think to yourself, what are my values? Let's start there. What are my values and what's most important to me? And where am I at financially? What you find, and not money, wealth isn't just about money, it's about other things, your health, your family life, your marriage, your relationship with your children, your mental state. So when you assess all those areas and you define what's most important to you, which in the book we get you to define what's important to you financially and what's important to you from the joy perspective. When you've mapped out what your life financial joy looks like, you realize that financial joy is different for everybody and it's unique. Yeah? So that means that for some people, what they want is to be able to pay their bills every month. That for them, they'll be happy with that. For some people, it's I want to be able to go on 2 holidays a year, and like in addition to paying my bills, like life would be great if I could do that. For some people, it's do you know what? I want to have maybe 10K in savings, or I want to have built up my stock portfolio to my first 50K or first 100K, and that for me, the beginning of this level of maturity when it comes to wealth and well-being is defining what financial joy means to people. For everybody listening and watching, what does it mean for you? And what you find there is, a lot of the time, you are already experiencing a lot of what that best life could look like for you in your present life already. Or at least by defining what it is, you can start to create a bit of a plan to work towards it. So in that sense, financial joy, because it's unique to everybody, is accessible to everybody because it's their own definition. And secondly, because when you really think about it, you are already many steps in that direction already. You are already starting to enjoy that life. I'll give you an example. Mary and I now take August off every year as non-negotiable to travel. Non-negotiable. Every year we shut down, do all the things we need to do, schedule things, and speak to our team and get stuff. But we'll take that time off to reconnect, and as a married couple, and reconnect with our children. Like this year, we're doing exactly the same thing. Some travels alone, we call them our vacations, just a bit Mary and I, and then some travels with our kids, right? Yeah. But that came after the pandemic, because I reassessed my life, and I said to myself, like this period was a point of no return for me and Mary. Like, what do we want? What's most important to us? And how do we start to design a life that works for us? That was a piece in our life of financial joy. And it became accessible to us the minute we decided it. We needed to make some changes in our lives and make those key priorities and we started to live that life. So in that sense, financial joy is for everyone. You don't have to be a rich person. You don't have to have £1 million in your bank to feel like you're there. It begins now, depending on how you've defined it for yourself. It begins with that mindset and that shift.
Fantastic, fantastic. I also want to ask you what inspires you. I don't know if you've got time for that.
Sure, of course. Yeah. I'd say people, first of all. So there are people that I look and I think, wow, they're doing some really interesting things. Particularly people who are doing things that I see are improving the lives of other people. And I think, wow, like, that's really, really inspiring. That's one thing. Another thing is I really enjoy entrepreneurship. Like I really genuinely geek out on it. Like I like to figure stuff out. Like I'm like, we don't have a lot of money to build stuff, but how can we still do it?
I could tell when you came here today.
I like the guy we saw here, like I'm chatting to him, I'm like, where'd you get that CCTV? How else could we, I'm asking questions. So stuff like that, chatting to people inspires me, because I'm like, wow, like he or she has been able to do this kind of stuff, and I've got certain ambitions. I'm like, how can we go about doing that kind of stuff? Also, my family inspire me. So I come from a family of, my parents, my siblings, my wife, obviously my children. Family life and trying to really maintain a certain, joy and level of experience and, positive relationship really inspires me because, I like seeing my children and seeing them, deciding what they want to do, their interests changing. My son's into chess now. Before, he was massively into playing Roblox, but then it's like, actually, I'm not really enjoying that anymore. I'm into my chess and he's into another type of game. Again, seeing what they're doing really, really inspires me. And frankly, I'd probably say, just just dreaming big inspires me personally, right? So a lot of time I suffer also from just, I guess, like everybody else, you get imposter syndrome where you're like, well, you know, I'm not quite sure where things are going. You know, for me, dreaming big and trusting God that, you know, things will work out, and, you know, provided things I'm dreaming about really align with where, you know, God's plans for my life, that knowing that there's a possibility of certain things happening for me inspires me and keeps me going in the work that we're doing.
What do you think about this podcast and what we're trying to do?
I think it's phenomenal. I mean, I told you before we came online that I listened to Dawood's episode like back to, you know, like literally beginning to end, every word. And I think, you know, the fact that it's called Against All Odds podcast, I think first of all is very, very intriguing. I mean, it's such a phenomenal name. But I just think what it represents is really powerful. You're speaking to people who are doing phenomenal things, people who are on their journey. And I think listening to other people's stories is very inspiring, because then for a lot of people, it's knowing that somebody else you can relate to has done something that you want to do could be the thing that unlocks the door for them, that changes something in their mindset. Like, wow, I listened to him or her or them, and I'm like, wow, I heard this person say something. You know, like I was saying to you about Dawood's journey, I was like, wow, you know, he's telling the story about how he got into what he'd been doing, and had he not been there that night. And I'm like, wow, like, can you imagine? And some people look at that as coincidence, like, wow, this is how, you know, God has a really interesting, like, personality. And like, wow, this is how God works. You know, God's way of thinking is very different to how we think. And for me, that was like, whoa, that's like super, just mind blowing. I'm like, wow, even more reason for me to keep trusting God. And, you know, so for me, the work you're doing is enabling more than you could ever imagine, really. You are changing destinies, really, for the better through this work, because the more people listen, the more people feel inspired, but beyond inspiration, they take action to do very same. So that's what I think about it.
Right. We also have a tradition of this podcast where we give our guests the opportunity to dedicate the episodes that they feature on to anyone or any group of people of their choice. So I didn't warn you about this one.
Wow. Okay, so you can dedicate the episode to anyone.
Anyone.
Okay. Does it have to be a person?
It can be a person, it can be a group of people.
Okay, so I want to dedicate this episode to everybody who is struggling right now with their immigration situation in the UK. Because I think a lot of people who go through things with their residency, a lot of time feel unseen and suffer a lot of private shame, and I'm actually getting very emotional talking about it. Suffer a lot of private shame and really just struggle. So for me, you know, the fact that I'm sitting here and talking to you, and the fact that people are going to be listening to this, I just hope that my journey inspires them in some way and helps them believe that, you know what, where they're at is not where they're going to remain, that things will change for them, and they just need to keep trusting God, taking some practical action, having faith, and things will change for them over time. So, you know, I hope this really inspires somebody who's on that journey who feels alone or isolated or hopeless.
You know, I was thinking before I came on set today that you're the very embodiment of this podcast, because for somebody with your story, you shouldn't be where you are. It's against all odds. It's truly remarkable.
Thank you.
And my belief is that the more people can change their mindsets and step out in faith and acquire the right skill sets, and as you mentioned, the right tool set, the right networks, you know, change your environment, change the people you hang around with, change the books you're reading, change your habits, change how you use your time. You know, there is that possibility of living a life of purpose instead of just going from day to day to day in a job that you hate, just hoping that you don't get fired.
Yep.
You know, and living from hand to Wow.
Yes.
Ken, I'm so grateful for making this happen. This is a truly special episode to me. It's I'll feel very emotional about it. I didn't know how I was going to turn out, but this is a life-changing episode. I'm sure somebody's life will be impacted by this.
I want to thank you, for having the bravery to do these podcasts and run it, and the dedication. I got here, you set up everything, you set up all the lights and the microphones and all the things that people aren't seeing, the commitment to reach out to people. It's my prayer that the effort you put into this work will be multiplied more times than you can imagine, and that this opens more doors, for you, for your family, and leads to more outcomes that you can ever imagine. So honestly, when I say I'm honored, I truly mean it, because it's for me, it's unbelievable that I'm actually here, in many ways. Like when I think about the journey I've been on and the journey God's leading me on, it's why I keep saying I'm giving glory to God all the time, because I know that a lot of my walk isn't just because of I've read books and I've got connections or whatever. This is a faith walk, and so for me, may God continue to bless you and bless the works of your hands.
Thank you very much. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd like to leave some comments in the comment section below. I'd also like to like this video, share and subscribe.
That's it.
And then also please subscribe to humblepenny.com. I'm going to put all his details.
All the links, YouTube, Instagram, follow on LinkedIn. I like sharing on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and then Humble Penny Academy as well.
Yes, Financial Joy Academy.
Financial Joy Academy as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So Ken, thank you very much.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
See you next week.